Burkina Faso today is one of the poorest countries in the world. 80% of the population lives with less than $2 a day. Adult literacy rate hovers 35% and is in decline. 1 child out of 3 is chronically malnourished. 1 child out of 5 dies before the age of 5. Life expectancy is just 62. In 2022 and 2023 alone, there were 3 military coups. It's a landlocked state with no coast, no industry, and no stability. History cannot be built on what-ifs, but Burkina Faso carries a shadow. The possibility that its trajectory could have been different had one man not been assassinated in 1987 at just 37 years old. His name is Thomas Sankara, a soldier who refused his privileges, a leader who cut ministerial salaries, and who sold the government's Mercedes to pay for medicine. A president who launched the most ambitious vaccination campaign in Africa, immunizing millions of children against measles, meningitis, and yellow fever in just weeks. Who built hundreds of schools and health centers in just a few years. A man who placed the poor first, always first. Who believed that progress was not measured in skyscrapers or highways, but in every child in school, every village with clean water, every worker able to feed his family, and no family, abandoned by the state. In the early 1980s, Burkina Faso is called Upper Volta. It is one of the poorest countries in the world. Its GDP per capita is less than $300 a year. Only 3% of children attend middle school. Hunger is permanent. The countryside is struck by drought. Desertification from the Sahel advances every year. Average life expectancy is just 40 years. Independence from France in 1960 does not bring freedom. The state survives on foreign aid, loans, and the export of cheap raw materials. France keeps dictating its economy, its trade, its leaders. Between 1966 and 1983, 5 coups d'etat replace one uniform with another. President Maurice Yameogo is overthrown by the army. Later, Colonel Saye Zerbo stages a coup, promising reform but delivering repression. Zerbo is then overthrown by officers led by Jean-Baptiste Ouagadougou. It is in this cycle of collapse and betrayal that a young officer, Thomas Sankara, begins to rise. Trained in Madagascar, he witnesses the 1972 Malagasy Revolution. When students and workers overthrow the government, he absorbs communist and anti-imperialist ideas. He returns to Upper Volta with the conviction that his country too can change. In 1981, under Colonel Saye Zerbo, Sankara is appointed Secretary of State for Information. The role is meant to control journalists, to maintain government propaganda. Instead, Sankara orders journalists to write the truth, exactly as it happens, even if it offends those in power. It is shocking. Journalists had expected censorship. Instead, Sankara demands them to be honest. The government, including Zerbo himself, becomes the subject of open criticism in its own press. Zerbo threatens him. Sankara resigns in 1982, but Sankara is already a leader for the young who want change. Later that year, Zerbo is overthrown. Jean-Baptiste Ouagadougou takes power. He is a weak man, unknown to the public. In 1983, he appoints Sankara prime minister, already famous among the masses. Ouagadougou hopes to stabilize his rule by including this charismatic officer, but Sankara's speeches are uncompromising. Down with corruption, down with imperialism, down with France and the West. Within months, he is placed under house arrest. His detention is meant to silence him. Instead, it splits the army. Younger, radical officers in the army rally to his side. Conservative officers remain with Ouagadougou. The military, the government, stand divided. On August 4, 1983, Sankara's allies, led by Blaise Compaoré, launch a coup. They seize the capital, Ouagadougou. They free Sankara, and they place him at the head of the state. At the age of 33, Sankara becomes president of Upper Volta. But he doesn't like this name. It suggests a colonial past. It means nothing to the people. He wants to leave that past behind. He renames the country Burkina Faso, the land of upright, honest people, because he wants to build his country this way. The changes begin immediately. He fights bureaucracy. He silences the political parties. He wants power concentrated in his hands, because he knows that if these people keep influence, his radical reforms will never pass. Thousands of state employees are dismissed. Many were absent from work. Many spent their days in bars sipping alcohol. Yet they were paid salaries far higher than farmers and workers. Sankara calls them parasites living off the poor. He bans them from flying business or first class, only economy. No more champagne in hotels or fine dining, only local food. He bans luxury imports like perfume and whiskey, saying, "We have to choose between giving whiskey to some of you or giving clean water to all of us." Ministers must use local furniture and locally made goods. He bans presidential portraits in offices, saying, people should see themselves in those portraits. He declares war on hunger, corruption, and dependency. He seizes land from feudal landlords and traditional chiefs. Then he distributes it to peasants who work it. He orders irrigation projects, wells, and small dams across the country. Farmers are given tools and support. Wheat production rises by 75%. Within 4 years, Burkina Faso produces enough food to guarantee 2 meals a day and 5 liters of clean water for every citizen. To stop the Sahel Desert from swallowing farmland, he orders millions of trees to be planted. He sells the Mercedes cars of politicians, replaces them with the cheapest car in the country, the Renault 5, and uses the money to pay for the most ambitious vaccination campaign in Africa. In just 2 weeks, 2.5 million children are immunized against measles, meningitis, and yellow fever. Thousands of lives are saved simply by cutting the luxuries of the elite. He builds 350 schools and hundreds of health centers and pharmacies. Literacy campaigns reach every village. School enrollment increases by more than 50%. Literacy rises from 13% to over 70% in 4 years. To keep children in school, he introduces canteens to feed them to cut food costs for their parents. He also wages war on the oppression of women. He remembers his school days. A girl in his class became pregnant. She was expelled. The boy who made her pregnant stayed. For Sankara, this was the symbol of injustice. He never forgot it. In Burkina Faso, women carried the heaviest burdens, fetching water, farming the land, raising children, without rights. Sankara says society cannot change unless women are free. He outlaws forced marriage. He bans female genital mutilation. He bans polygamy. Women are pushed into schools, the army, and government, equal to men. Sankara, especially, wages war on privilege. Ministerial salaries are cut. Luxury items are banned. He demands self-sufficiency. Consume what we produce. If we don't have it, let's make it. He mocks people wearing thrift clothes with California or Harvard written on them. Do you even know what those words mean? Why not wear Burkina clothes? Officials are ordered to wear traditional Burkina cotton. Sankara himself lives simply, a president who chooses to live as his people. I want to create a country where those who are governed are happy, not those who govern. He also reforms the army. For decades, soldiers had lived in barracks in the capital, waiting for the next coup. Idle, plotting, used only to intimidate the population. Sankara changes this. He sends them out of Ouagadougou, to the borders, into the villages. Soldiers now build roads. They dig wells. They plant trees. They help farmers with the harvest. They run vaccination campaigns. They teach literacy. Soldiers lose their privileges. Officers eat the same food as ordinary soldiers. They wear the same clothes. They train in the fields, working the land to feed themselves and cut costs for the state. No privileges, no big paychecks, no decorated uniforms. Sankara repeats, an army that doesn't serve its people becomes their enemy. So he makes service to civilians part of its doctrine. He cuts the military budget, redirecting funds to schools and hospitals. Many officers are furious. They lose weapons, they lose perks. Now, with soldiers spread across the countryside, far from the capital, it becomes harder to organize conspiracies. Coups are less likely. The military is busy serving the people, instead of plotting to overthrow governments. At first, Sankara behaves like no president before him. He rides his bicycle to work. Sometimes he jogs. He plays football with the people every week. No bodyguards in dark sunglasses. No limousines. No walls between him and the crowd. He wants to show that he is not above them. that he is one of them. But over time, this becomes harder. His radical reforms create enemies everywhere. The landlords he stripped of land, the bureaucrats he dismissed, the officers who lost their privileges, the businessmen who lost their contracts, the foreign powers he defied. Assassination attempts multiply, his security grows tighter. The simple image of a president walking or cycling among his people begins to fade. Sankara pushes his fight further, against imperialism, against dependency. He refuses to borrow a single cent from the IMF or the World Bank. He calls foreign debt a new form of slavery. He says, those who feed you, control you. For him, it is simple. The poor owe nothing to those who once enslaved them. If anything, the colonizers owe a debt to Africa. At the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, in July 1987, he calls on African leaders to unite and stop paying. He warns them, if Burkina Faso stands up alone, I will not be here at the next summit. He is right. The CIA begins to closely monitor him. In declassified reports, Sankara is described as a threat to Western interests in Africa, even called a danger to democracy and human rights by the US government. The irony is striking. A president who lives like his people, who fights corruption, hunger, and inequality, accused of endangering freedom. His model of radical independence, his rejection of aid and loans, his calls for self-sufficiency, Washington fears this could inspire a chain reaction across the continent. France, too, cannot accept him. Paris depends on its former colonies for uranium, gold, cotton, and political control. If Sankara succeeds, the whole France-Afrique system, the network of corrupt African elites who serve France, could collapse. His neighbors turn into enemies. Félix Houphouët-Boigny of Ivory Coast, Gnassingbé Eyadema of Togo, Omar Bongo of Gabon, all close allies of France, see Sankara as dangerous. They call him the African Castro. They worry that his revolution will spill over into their borders. They begin plotting with France. Blaise Compaoré, Sankara's closest friend and ally, is pulled into the conspiracy. On October 15, 1987, at 4:30 in the afternoon, Thomas Sankara chairs a meeting with his cabinet at the Conseil de l'Entente in Ouagadougou. Outside, gunfire erupts. Soldiers loyal to Compaoré storm the building. Sankara stands up. He tells his comrades, "Stay. Don't be afraid." Then he walks outside with his hands in the air. Witnesses say he shouted to the soldiers to spare his companions. His body is instantly riddled with bullets. 14 of his men are killed with him. His body is then thrown into a shallow grave. The revolution ends in a hail of bullets. Blaise Compaoré seizes power. He reverses Sankara's policies, restores ties with France, and opens the country once again to debt and aid. Burkina Faso falls back into the system Sankara had tried to destroy. When Sankara's house is searched, his inheritance shocks the world. A modest home, still under mortgage. 2 guitars, 3 bicycles, 1 Renault 5, no fortune, no hidden accounts. This was the wealth of a president, proof that he lived exactly as he preached. His death leaves a void. Burkina Faso soon returns to poverty and corruption. Today, it is once again one of the poorest nations on earth. Its children die of hunger and disease. Coups replace coups. A country that once dreamed of independence is now one of the most aid-dependent in Africa. Across Africa, Sankara is remembered as the upright man. His face is painted on walls, his speeches are quoted by students, his name is invoked in protests. He is a symbol of what could have been. A leader who chose to live like his people, who wanted to build a country where the governed were happy, not those who govern. You can kill a revolutionary, but not his ideas, he once said.